What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS on an unlimited LTE plan and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is, if getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Sometimes we need to slow down and remember the simple pleasures in life. Good coffee, good books, and good company. Come on in. Take a seat. The coffee's just been brewed. Let's see who we have in the coffee shop today. Oh, what a beautiful time to be in the coffee shop. Everyone's so relaxed, reading their favorite books. Now, I want to talk books. Who can I find? There's Rachel Hardcastle. And she's got Finding Pandora on the table next to her. Wow, that's your book and it's got your name on it. So how are you today, Rachel?
Hi, Jessie. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So the name on the book is actually Rachel Hardcastle.
Yes,
just to clarify for the listeners. And it's called Finding Pandora. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Finding Pandora is a young adult high fantasy novel. It's a series of 4. The first one is World, then it's Heaven, Infinity and Eternity. And the first book, which is actually free to download for people, is about a young woman called Harriet Monroe who never expected to be thrust into the heart of complete supernatural chaos or end up with 4 supernatural gifts of her own. But suddenly she's got all these friends that she has to rescue, lots of vampires to fight, and impossible expectations to meet. And she thinks that she's walking pandemonium and she'll never meet these expectations. But a group of supernatural people called the Recruit think that she's actually their saviour and they'll do everything they possibly can to prove it.
Wow, that sounds absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
So where is Finding Pandora the 4th one in the series?
Finding Pandora is the name of the series altogether. So the books are World, Heaven, Infinity and Eternity. And then you can get the complete collection, which is all 4.
Oh, it sounds fascinating. So what was your latest release?
So the latest release was Eternity, which is the 4th book in the series. And that's got lots of battles in between good and evil. Pandora, the Greek goddess, makes an appearance and her box and the evils in it. And lots of supernatural people such as Everlasts and Retainers and Shapeshifters and some not so nice ones like werewolves and orcs.
Sounds like a fantastic world.
It's a strange world, a really strange world.
Well, isn't that the point of a good book, to settle down and be whisked away from everyday times and troubles and go off and envelop yourself in a different world?
I think so, definitely. I think that's probably why I wrote the world so intricate, because I love to get lost in fantasy worlds and different planets and different species. So I think that's kind of why I wrote the book the way I did.
So how long did it take you to write the series and each individual book?
Wow. Well, the series is actually quite old. I first wrote the series when I was 18 years old, and I'd first published my debut novel, The Soul Sanctuary, and wanted to move on to something a little bit more interesting, something a little bit wackier. So I decided to give fantasy a go, and I wrote all of the 4 books. They took about 4 months each, a little bit longer, obviously, to edit them and produce them and get them ready for the public eye. And then earlier this year, I decided that I was going to rewrite them and re-release them. Got a new title and a new storyline and some extra interesting bits thrown in there. And then I re-released them and did a whole new launch party. So roughly about a year for the new version, but since 2010 for the actual birth of the series itself.
Wow. So what made you decide to rework the whole series?
I think because I was so young when I brought the series out the first time, I think I knew that the series could be better and that I fancied a new challenge and wanted to try rewriting stories rather than just writing new ones. I had lots of fresh ideas that I was working on at the same time, but I'd also had quite a lot of people say that they would be interested to see what the book would be like if I had come up with it recently. So I kind of just challenged myself to make it as good as I possibly could. And it was really fun to revisit the series and to kind of throw in those extra exciting storylines and characters, and just to make sure that the book was as polished as it could possibly be. Because I mean, when I was 18, I was quite naive, I think, with what publishing a book entailed. So it was great to be able to learn all these new skills and do all the research in between and have a second shot at it this year.
Well, I think that's a great way to be, and I think it probably gives your readers a whole new adventure to go on from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I would hope so. I brought in a fantasy map so my readers can follow where Ariette is on her journey, my main character Ariette Monroe and her friends. So I wanted them to be able to follow her and go on the adventure with her. And I think whilst the series back in 2010 was good, I don't think it was quite as complete as I wanted it to be. There's a whole other language in there and new powers that I created. And I think I just wanted to make sure that they were as polished as possible. So it was great to return to the series and get stuck in again, because I kind of missed it, if I'm being honest.
Well, I always equate books with children, and they are your children. You send them out to the world. In this case, you were able to bring the child back in and help him learn a few new skills and send him back out in a more polished way.
Yeah, books are definitely an author's babies, I think, and they were babies of mine that I think I just needed to give a second chance to. And to really get stuck in again and develop some extra exciting storylines and bring in some new fun characters and get Ariette in a whole lot more trouble than she was in before. And I'm definitely pleased that I did that. I think I've managed to accomplish what I set out to.
So you mentioned polishing your books. Does that include use of an editor?
No, I actually do all my own editing, all my own copy editing, proofreading. I do employ some beta readers. I have kind of a set amount of beta readers that are my usual helpers, and they go through it with a fine-tooth comb and help me out, and the regular friends and family. And then when I feel the book is as good as it can possibly be, only then does it ever see the public eye.
Well, that's great, because I've read both traditional, indie, and self-pub, and there's nothing worse than a book that essentially reads like a rough draft.
Yeah, I tend to, it makes me cringe when I look online and I see that there's so many books uploaded onto Amazon and Kobo and all these other wonderful platforms, but the covers are poor and the editing's poor. And I think it's a shame, because the stories behind those books and the ideas and the work that went into writing the initial edition, the work that went into writing the original manuscript, I think was probably amazing, and there was real potential, and it ruins it really, and it does the author an injustice when the external cover and the sample chapter doesn't live up to what's expected. So I not only edit for myself, I also edit for other people, other indie authors who I just want to help. I want to prevent this from happening in future. So I guess that's why I put so much effort into my own manuscripts. They go through about 6 or 7 complete edits before I even give them to my beta readers. And then when they come back, it goes through yet another edit and another polish. So some might say I'm a little bit obsessive, but I think that's probably the best way to be if you're not employing an external editor.
I think it is great, and I will have to admit I've never read an indie or self-published book yet that I liked that wasn't edited.
Really? Well, that's a real shame. I think that if indie books are out there and they're constantly disappointing, then there's something wrong. Indies need to get together and realise that we need to put more effort in and we need to impress these readers. I think an independent book should be difficult to tell apart from a traditionally published book or a digitally published book by a small house. I think that the quality should be the same. It should be just as exciting, just as fulfilling to buy one of those books than it is to buy a traditionally published paperback. And it's a real shame that you maybe feel let down by the indie authors. So hopefully you will one day come across an indie book that you absolutely love, and you'll be a fan of that author for life.
I have some indie authors that I love, and I have traditional ones that I love. It's just one of those things. I've also run into an author who I will not name. His strategy was, I write a draft, edit it once, put it up on Amazon, get some reviews, take it down, edit it, and put it back.
I can't agree that that's the best way to do it, unfortunately. I commend his bravery and his confidence in his work, and the fact that he's taking those reviews on board and then doing the work and putting it back. But I think those reviews are there for life as well, and you want to get the readers, as many readers as you can, and impress them as much as you can, and having poor reviews on there to start with isn't the best way to do that, in my opinion. But if it's working for him and the readers are still enjoying the work, I suppose it's up to them, really, I guess. I don't really know what to say to that, if I'm being honest.
I have to say, I've read his polished and his unpolished work, and I prefer his polished work very much. In fact, little known fact, I actually do have a few writers who, well, they will eventually appear on Coffee Shop, I beta read for them.
Oh, that's interesting that you're a beta reader as well for these authors. And I think that just helps as well, because so many indies struggle to find people that are honest, that will give them honest feedback. They hand them to friends and family and expect that the replies they get will reflect the true quality of the manuscript. And it doesn't always. It's difficult giving it to your mum or your sister, because they won't want to hurt your feelings. If you give it to someone who you know is going to be honest, and if they do give you negative feedback, it's purely because they want your work to be the best it can be, and they truly care about the book. I think that's always a better option. It hurts your feelings maybe, and it doesn't feel too great in the beginning, but by the end of the process, I think it's beneficial to give it to as many different people as you can, to make sure that those people reading your genre, that they're avid readers, perhaps of the correct age group, and then take it from there. But it's wonderful that you're a beta reader, particularly if it's for indies as well. That's great.
Everybody I read for is either a small press or an indie.
Oh, that's good. I think traditionally published authors have editors and proofreaders behind them, but I think sometimes as well, if it's a small house, they can benefit too from having beta readers. I suppose the more eyes on the manuscript before it sees the public, before it actually goes live for people to buy, the better.
I think so too. So how long did it take you to create this world, and what made you finally decide to put a map in? Because I've very rarely read a fantasy book that didn't give you a map. So I'm glad you put one in, but what was the final straw that made you say, I've got to put this in?
I think since writing and putting the series out there the first time, I've actually grown to love fantasy a lot more than I used to. I read a lot more high fantasy, such as Game of Thrones, historical fantasy, and things like that. And again, I noticed that every one of those had maps, and that mine was missing this really obvious additional page that people look for and would perhaps be disappointed not to find in my books. So when I did the rewrite, I put together a map using free resources, and more just, rather than as a perfect artistic view of the world, I wanted it basically just to allow my readers to follow the story, to follow where the places were, to be able to flick through and find the names of the places and the spellings and the pronunciation. So there's a whole guide in the book about how to pronounce some of the other languages, and the guides to the powers, and the organisation that's called the Recruit in the first book. There's a whole guide in there as well. So there's lots of additional material that helps readers to fully understand the world and to immerse themselves deeply in it if they want to. It's optional, but I prefer books that do that, because then at the end I kind of feel I've got all these extra goodies that I can enjoy and get the most out of. So I think because I'd read so many books that had those in, I kind of felt mine was missing it, and I wanted to have a go at doing that myself. And I'm so glad that I did, because I've had so much wonderful feedback to say that from the original to now, it's actually better, because they can view the world and imagine it, and the directions, and what's in the north and what's in the south, and the names of the places. And I'm just so pleased that I did it.
Well, I'm always one of those people that I love taking a little peek behind the curtain and finding out, how something ticks, for lack of a term, or how this book on the shelf came to be. So I think you've got a fascinating story, and I can't wait to snatch these books off the table. I can't, but I have to, at least till the end of the episode.
Thank you.
I've been told more than once, I'll read anything, even the cereal box, if it sits in front of me long enough.
Yeah, I'm quite an avid reader, I must admit. If it looks good, no matter what it is or what it's on, I will pick it up and give it a read.
Now, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but everybody does. So did you design your cover yourself? How did these beautiful covers come into existence?
Well, when I was looking at bringing the book back out, I found out that it only really takes a second for readers, less than a second sometimes, for readers to judge whether or not they want to click on your book when they're shopping online. So I kind of felt that I needed something that was beautiful and clear and easy to read as a small icon, as a thumbnail, rather than go for something overly flashy that was difficult to understand. There's so many beautiful covers out there, but I think they're so crammed with design, and they're so vibrant and different colours and texts and things that they can be a little bit overpowering. And I just wanted something simple that would be easy to turn into a series so that my readers knew they could expect more from me, and they could easily identify the next book in the series. So I took that research and that feedback on board, and I developed the 4 covers that are World, Heaven, Infinity and Eternity, which are navy blue with a sunset at the bottom and a blossom tree blowing in the wind. And then my main character, Harriet Monroe, looking up at the stars and almost producing stars. The stars are coming from her as if there's something special and unique about her that's adding to the universe. And I used a basic italic text, a basic capitalized subtitle, and then a snippet of my reader's favourite review, just to give the readers a taste of what they could expect from each book. And then I brought out my paperback cover, Finding Pandora, the complete collection, and pulled it all together, really. So each of the ebooks is the same background, just with a simple silhouetted design to give you a taste for what's in each of the books in the series. And then the paperback book combines all of those and brings it together in one print version. So that's kind of how I did it, and my logic behind it.
Well, I think it's great that you not only thought about the cover, but you thought about what it would look like as that little icon.
Yes, I think a lot of authors miss the trick because it's tempting to build a really intricate cover, and they look beautiful when they're printed and you're actually holding them in your hands. But for those authors that prefer audiobooks or ebooks, you've got to try and capture their interest and get them to click on the link to delve into what the book's about and read the reviews and read the description. And when you're scrolling down a page of 50 different books on Amazon, yours has got to stand out and grip them enough to want to click on it. And it only takes a second for them to decide yes or no. So it's a very short window of time to grab their attention. So I personally feel it needs to be understated and give them something to want to delve into. So to appeal to their curiosity, to think, yes, it's simple, but why is it so simple? And what more is there to offer behind this basic cover? So that's kind of my logic behind it and why I designed the covers the way I did.
Well, I think they're fantastic. And like I said, I am guilty. My Kindle is never far from me. And I am one of those e-readers. In fact, my Kindle, which is around a year old, can't even hold my entire library.
Wow, so that you really do have a lot of books then. My Kindle's one of the originals with the old keyboard, and it's got an old cover on it, and I use it every day. It's probably a little bit overworked, but I don't think I've come close at all to filling it, so that's a real achievement.
Yeah, it was the day that happened, I was like, what do you mean I can't add these 5 books? And the Kindle was giving me this message I never thought I'd see. It was full. I had to delete some. Not permanently, but just take them off my device and let them live in the cloud. And I was like, okay, I don't want to, but I will.
That's the good thing about Amazon as well, though, is that once you purchase a book, if you have to remove it for some reason, you can then go back into your orders and have it resent to your device at any time. So if you do have to sacrifice some books, if anybody else is struggling with a full Kindle, which I think is probably really unusual. You might be the only person in the world, Jessie, that's ever had to do that. But they can then go and re-download those books at any time and swap and change them around a little bit. So it's sad to think you have to delete books in the beginning, but they're there for you in the future if you ever want them.
Yep. But like I said, I'm a voracious reader. Probably read more than your average person does in a year. I read about 2 novels a week, sometimes 3.
Wow, so that is a lot. I don't think I can read these days with me having so much else going on with my writing and my copy editing services and cover design services and everything else that's going on. I don't think I can get through a book in a month sometimes.
Well, I've been blessed. I have an above average reading speed. Now, I don't know the UK reading speed average, but here in the United States, it's 150 to 250 words a minute. So, from about half to 2/3 of a page to a page a minute.
That's really fast.
I read a lot faster than that. I read at 2,500 words a minute.
Wow. I don't read that fast at all. I think purposely sometimes I read slower to take it in. I wouldn't want to skim read or read too quickly and miss something really important, especially in a complicated series like Game of Thrones. Although it would be nice to read the whole of Game of Thrones much faster. I think the first book took me something like a month and a half to read because it was so complicated and I had so much else going on. So I would love to read as fast as you do, but I just don't think I'm quite there yet.
When I want to skim, Rachel, it's 5,000 words a minute.
So still really fast then. I'm still really jealous.
Yeah, that's why I go through so many books, but that's what prompted me to start Coffee Shop, because I do love books, and I wanted to know, I've tried writing, so please, no lectures on me needing to start writing. Not going to happen, folks, just not. But I wanted to know what goes into making a book without having to walk down the path.
I think a lot of avid readers do like to know the behind-the-scenes information, and I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about books myself, why I love them as much as I do, not just for writing them, but for owning them and shopping for them and reading them, because I'm so interested in the process behind it anyway. I think if I wasn't a writer, I'd still want to know how a book came to be a book and what kind of work went into it and who was involved and how many rounds of edits it has to go through and the different types of publishing and the difference between indie and traditional and all that kind of thing. So I think sometimes readers are just interested in that anyway, and it's wonderful that even people that have been so set on paperbacks for so long are now starting to pick up a Kindle because they see how convenient it is when you go on holiday. So just a general passion for books anyway, I think is something that you and I share, Jessie.
Oh, I love my books. I love my books, and my Kindle's right here on the end of my desk right now. It had to be charged. I was running around all day yesterday, so my Kindle wasn't usually far from my hand.
I also really like how Kindles aren't as daunting as reading a paperback book, and I mean that by when you buy a paperback book, there could be 1,000 pages. It could be this huge, seemingly impossible to read book, but when you're reading it on a Kindle, you don't see all those pages other than maybe a number at the bottom, and the pages seem smaller and easier to read. And I think once you get going with a Kindle, you don't realize how much you're reading until you're halfway through the book and sitting up in the middle of the night thinking I really should go to sleep. So I like Kindles for that purpose as well, and for the fact that you can load literally a whole library onto them and take it on holiday, and if you don't make friends with the book that you're reading, you can pick up another book without having to take all the weight of a bulky paperback or a hardback with you. So that's purely why I love Kindles, because of the convenience. But I must admit, I do still love a paperback, and I collect Barnes & Noble leather-bound classics, so I love good hardbacks as well, solid hardbacks. Just books in general, I think I am passionate about.
Well, my husband is active duty military, so that means we move every 3 to 5 years, and you have a weight limit. So our rule has become you can have 2 authors that you buy everything under their name in any format you want. Everything else, Kindle.
And if you don't mind me asking, Jessie, which of those 2 authors for you? Who are you kind of addicted to reading?
Well, I'm still debating on the second one. I haven't actually decided which one that's going to be, but my one is Brad Thor. He's a thriller writer.
I don't actually recognise that name, but it'll give me something to look up and some more books to buy.
He's a New York #1, traditionally published by Simon & Schuster, Atria Books, #1 New York Times bestselling author multiple times over. And the thing that makes his thrillers great is the research he puts in. He went down to the license plate of Turkey's prime minister and got it right in his most recent book.
Wow, so he really does spend an awful lot of time doing the research and the fact-checking. I think that's why I love Dan Brown's stories, because there's a lot of symbolism and things in it as well. So it obviously took him a long time to put the story together. I think it means we can appreciate it more as a reader sometimes. So I know what you mean there, Jesse.
And the great thing about Brad Thor's books is he'll take real facts and weave them into the fiction. So you don't know sometimes what's fact and what's fiction. Now, I have to admit, his book hits my Kindle at midnight. It's finished well before sunrise. Then I go back, and to slow myself down, I flip my Kindle upside down, so I'm reading upside down. So then I sit there with the computer open, and I'm looking up different things, going, is that real or is that fiction? Is that real or is that fiction?
But that's good that you get so much enjoyment out of the book, and you're that invested as a reader that you would go back and read the book again and upside down. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody reading a book upside down. But it's great that he captivates you enough to do that.
Oh, well then if I'm blessed enough to go to a Brad Thor book signing that year, I get 3 signed hardbacks.
So you're collecting his signed copies as well. Have you met him in person?
Yes.
Wow, I think the only author I've met in person is Charlaine Harris. If I'm pronouncing her name right, Charlaine Harris, the author of the True Blood series and most recently Midnight Texas, all of which I think are TV series as well. I loved her dark fantasy True Blood books with Sookie Stackhouse, and I remember queuing up for hours to meet her in a local bookstore. So I'm jealous that you've got so many signed copies. I would love to collect more from all my favourite authors, but with me living in the UK and a lot of my favourite authors being American, it's kind of hard to do that sometimes.
Yes, I'm sure it is. But like I said, I'm blessed that I do live here, and I get to go to one of his book signings every now and again. But he is a 1-book-a-year person because it literally takes him a year to put out the quality of book he does.
I can imagine then the copy editors and proofreaders have got to have fun in fact-checking for him as well. They've got to go through it all and double-check everything that he's just had to double-check himself. So it would be a long process, but seemingly beneficial.
I'm not sure they're always going to have access to the sources that he uses, because he has a lot of friends in special operations and things like that that'll give him little unclassified details. And so
oh, I see.
I'm not sure they can always fact-check him on the little stuff. The big stuff, yeah. The little stuff, I'm not sure they can.
I wonder how frustrated his proofreaders are not being able to access all this information, but it always turns out okay in the end by the sound of it, so it's a good thing.
He can turn anything. Even, like, in the United States, we have an organization called the Federal Reserve. It has to do with our financial system. Sounds pretty boring, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
He turned the history of that organization into a thriller, a white-knuckle thrill ride.
Which in turn has interested probably a lot more readers in the truth behind it as well. So, again, a good thing. He's kind of teaching people, educating people, I would say, at the same time as entertaining them.
Mr. Frog just refuses to go away today. Well, thankfully for me, we have come to that point in the show where it is time to top off the coffee. And I'm guessing with you, Rachel, it's a hot cup of tea.
I drink tea and coffee, so either surprise me.
All right, well, we'll top off your cup. And we will go pay those radio station bills, and I will see you on the other side.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Well, here's hoping I have given Mr. Frog his eviction notice for the day, because boy, has he been trying to put his 2 cents worth in, and no, I am not going to introduce him, but I will reintroduce Rachel, our ever-wonderful author of the series Finding Pandora. So how you doing there, Rachel?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm nice and refilled with my coffee, so I'm happy.
Great. Now, how do you come up with this fantasy world map and language, and trying to create that boggles my brain. So how do you do it?
I personally do it in stages. So I'll look at character development to kind of get the feel for whose story I'm telling, and then the setting. So how am I going to have that character complete the tasks I need her to complete? I think all characters need to want something or need something, and there should be something standing in their way. So I look at the plot in a separate section. And for this book in particular, this series in particular, there were supernatural powers, another language. So everything that is included in the book was done in stages and developed in stages. And once I have the basics or the first draft written, I then go through and write something called story beats. So I have my document open on one side, my original manuscript, and then on the other side, I have my story beats open. And basically what I do is go through chapter by chapter and break the story down. So I'll explain what happens in the first chapter in note format. I'll colour code everything, so my character information, what that person's wearing, that person's age, anything about that person that gets disclosed during the chapter goes in one colour. Anything about the storyline goes in another. Anything that goes in blue, I choose blue specifically because of the cover, is for the subplot. So anything that is a little bit more complicated that might need development further down the line. And then I basically cover as much as I possibly can about that chapter before I move on to the next one. And I think that helps because when I'm then developing the story and developing the characters, I don't have to scroll through thousands and thousands of words to get the information that I need, or remember in which chapter I described what she was wearing or who she was in love with or how to spell that person's name. And particularly because there's an additional language in there that was developed through my study of signs and symbols and pulling in other languages. I need to know what all those words mean. I need to be able to understand my own language. So I think sometimes it helps to have kind of a reference book, a Bible for the series, so I can easily find everything I need. And that certainly helps when you're writing a complicated series.
So do you just write in Microsoft Word, or do you use special writing software? What is the vehicle you use to pull all this together?
I have a couple of different pieces of software that I kind of switch between depending on the project that I'm working on. Pandora was developed in OpenOffice, which is kind of a free version of Microsoft Word. And then for the recent book that I'm working on at the moment, the one that's due out in December, November, December time, I was actually developing in Scrivener. So I use several different ones, and I like to trial and test them and see the benefits and the things that I don't like, and then I know in future which projects are best suited to that particular program.
I think that's great, and I also think you're the first author I've met who uses more than one piece of software.
Yeah, I like to have a range of options as well, because I used OpenOffice, and then suddenly a couple of months ago it decided for some reason it didn't want to export as a PDF document, which I like to be able to do if I'm sending my beta readers a couple of chapters to have a look at. I like to send them a PDF file. And for some reason, OpenOffice just wasn't playing game. So I then moved on to Microsoft Word. I copied and pasted the section into Microsoft Word and did it in there. I like Scrivener because I think it's brilliant for compiling research and images and links and things, as well as actually writing the book. And I know that there's a brilliant compile kind of section there where it gets your manuscript ready to upload to like CreateSpace or whichever indie platform you're using. So I think each one has its merits, and each one also has kind of some negatives and some things that I don't like about them. But if you don't try them, you never know. So you'll never know what's best for you unless you give them all a shot.
I think that is great advice. So what advice would you give to the writer who they say, I want to write a fantasy book, I've got this idea. What advice would you give to?
I would say not to be afraid of it, because I think so many authors think, I'm going to write this epic fantasy series, and they big it up in their mind so much that they then become afraid of it, that they think it's too complicated and too hard to write. I think if you are that passionate about the series that you've developed in your mind, and just trust your imagination, trust that you can get at least an initial draft down. And once you've done that, then is the time to worry about perfecting it. During the actual creation, that's the fun bit. You need to enjoy what you're doing and not worry about the technicalities of it and what goes on behind the scenes. Just write, and write because you love it and you want to enjoy writing the book that you want to read. And then once you've got the draft down and you've got kind of the basic skeleton or the roadmap of where the story's going, you've got a beginning, middle and end, then really delve deep into the story, add your subplots in, add your extra characters, develop your own language, that kind of thing. And just, like I said, just do it in stages. Take your time. It's not a race. There's no rush. And just make sure that everything that you want to be included has been included, but that it's well-rounded so that all your subplots have answers, that you don't leave readers feeling that they're unsatisfied, that all your characters are rounded, that their arcs are full, that perhaps you don't have to give them what they want either. A lot of people assume that when you're writing a book, you're writing it because they have to go and find, in my case, Pandora's box. Well, it would be interesting sometimes for a reader to read the story and for them not to get Pandora's box for some reason. So giving the characters what they want isn't always the best thing, because you have to throw in some conflict. There has to be a reason for the reader to want to back the character, for them to want them to win. So I think you need to also ensure that you focus on conflict and perhaps throw as much at your character as you possibly can. And then if you feel it's too much towards kind of the end of the process, the draft, then dial it down a little bit. But just go in there, guns blazing, really go for it, have fun, and then worry about the rest later.
So you're a big proponent of throwing Murphy's Law, that everything can go wrong that will, at your characters, huh?
Yes, but I'm also not afraid to take some of it out either. I think you can really punish the character as much as you possibly can, just to make the book as exciting as you can possibly imagine, and then look at it from a logical perspective and think, okay, well, this guy comes into it at this point of view, but if I took him out, would that leave room for me to develop something else that's more interesting? And I think you've just got to look at it logically, not to overwhelm your reader or your character or make it sound too forced, like you were just throwing in every little idea that you possibly had and haven't considered the consequences. But at the draft stage, there's absolutely nothing stopping an author from doing that. You just need to make sure that when you're rewriting and editing the book that you cut the necessary scenes.
Well, editing is an interesting thing, and it's often called slaying your darlings. So what was your most loved scene you've had to take out of the series?
Wow, I don't actually think I have one in particular because I cut quite a lot. When the story was originally put together in 2010, I think it was probably longer, particularly the fourth book was longer. It was a full novel length, and when I actually rewrote the book, I rewrote World, Heaven and Infinity and included more in them, and then realised that actually I needed to dial it down in Eternity, that most books in a series, that the last book is kind of the big, ridiculously long book, and I think actually out of all of them it's the shortest one. It's more of a novella than it is a novel, and I think I just had to look at it realistically and think, okay, well, this part was thrown in kind of at last minute because I thought it would be interesting for the reader, but actually reading it back from a reader's perspective, it's unnecessary, it doesn't go anywhere. It's a subplot that can perhaps be replaced by something else more interesting or develop an aspect of one of the other subplots instead. So I've cut quite a lot of scenes, I've cut quite a lot of characters, I've cut quite a lot of involvement between the characters because there's quite a high cast in the series. So the recruit alone is about 14 different powers, all of whom have individual people owning those powers, but there's also their family members and their friends and the people that are fighting the war and the enemies. So there's a really huge cast, and I had to look at everybody and think, how relevant are you? How much do I love writing about you, and how much does the main character, the protagonist, interact with you? And if you don't make the cut, you've got to go. And sometimes it's hard. And sometimes I will cut a scene and think, actually, I do need it, and then I can put it back in again. So everything I cut, I save. But I think it's sometimes trial and error. It's your book, so at the end of the day, it's up to you what stays in. But sometimes beta readers can be helpful as well. If you give them more than one version, they'll usually tell you what works and what doesn't.
I think that's great advice, and I'm glad that you don't actually delete those precious words, because words are precious.
Yes, I don't delete anything for that exact reason, because I just never know if I'm going to be able to use it again. Even if not in that series, could I rewrite it and bring in a different character in different circumstances and use that material elsewhere? So I never delete anything. It's always there and handy, just in case, because you just never know.
So what was the one thing that you found yourself growing in, or how did you find yourself growing as a writer or as an author when you were working through this series for the second time?
I think my prose in general was, I wouldn't say it was weak, but it was certainly not as developed as it needed to be. I was only 18 when the books came out. They were my first attempt at a fantasy book, so I hadn't had any practice beforehand with any kind of draw-based manuscripts that I'd kind of hidden away, never to see the light of day. It was literally my first ever attempt at fantasy. So since then, I have read a lot of fantasy books. I've read a lot of writing guides and books on craft, books on self-editing. I have a copywriting compendium that I refer to sometimes. And I think the more you actually put editing and writing into practice, the better at it you become. I'm a strong believer that you can teach writing, but I think you actually have to write yourself to be able to learn it properly. I have received quite a lot of good advice from other writers. My teachers in school helped me. That's when I was first published. I was actually still in school when my book came out. But I do think you actually have to put it into practice. So I've had all these years now of writing other things, of writing blog posts and completely other genres and for different purposes. And I think the experience alone has helped my prose to flow better. I've learned that you can use semicolons instead of commas, and I think these are all just things that you pick up and you have to actually write to learn. It's okay somebody telling you what a semicolon does, but unless you've actually had a circumstance to use it, it's difficult to put it into context. So I think that's all it is really, just practice. I can't really give any other advice other than to just butt in chair, fingers on keyboard.
Well, I think that's great. And I wanted to refer back to something you said earlier, the joy of writing. I've heard tell of a saying called no joy in the writer, no joy in the reader. And also the other half of that saying is no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. So have your characters ever just run off and done something that completely surprised you, that you're like, wait a minute, I didn't want you to go down the right fork in the road, I want you to go down the left fork, and the character said, we're going down the right fork?
Yes, I think when I first wrote the series, I was very much a pantser, not a plotter. I'm somewhere in between now, I think. My skills have developed a little bit more and my patience has developed a little bit more, enough to sit and write an outline. But before, when the series was originally written, I gave Ariette free rein. I just told her to go for it, and whatever she wanted, she got, really. The same with the other characters. If I found that I was writing away and something just felt right, I allowed it to happen and then reviewed it later. So a lot of the things that happen in the series that seem quite out there, that seem quite wacky, or some subplots that are a bit out of the blue but are necessary and exciting, are usually the things that happened when I was allowing Ariette to go off on her own and do her own thing. Now, not so much. I think now I've rewritten the book, I have had to take a step back and kind of tighten those reins a little bit and say, well, you've had your fun, but I think you need to just take a step back a little bit and maybe calm down. And I've cut some of the scenes where she was running off and doing her own thing without purpose or reason. But I think part of the joy of writing is to let that happen sometimes and to just see what happens. If when you've written 5,000 words and I call it free writing, if you've allowed it to just spiral out of control, sometimes it's for the better. Sometimes you can read it back and cringe. But I think that's why I sit on everything for a couple of days after it's been written and then make a decision, because I wouldn't want to cut anything hastily. Just maybe set it aside for a day or two and then read it back and think, okay, well, is what happened necessary? Is it entertaining? Is it relevant to the story? And if not, then maybe take it back a step and pull your characters in and write according to your outline instead.
So I'm guessing by the way you described your outline, you're what I call the hybrid. You know you've got plot point A, plot point B, and plot point C, but how exactly you're getting from A to B and B to C, you don't have all the details in your outline. Does that sound about right?
Hybrid is the perfect description for me, yes. I have a basic roadmap, so I know that I want to get from point A to B, and I know that these characters have to be involved and that this particular thing has to happen, or so-and-so has to die, or there's a birth or a marriage or whatever going on. But the actual in-between parts, how that all happens and how it pulls together, is a mystery to me when I write, because I want to enjoy it. I want it to be fun, and I want to surprise myself and kind of read my book at the same time as writing it, enjoy it from a reader's perspective as well. So yes, a hybrid would be the perfect description for me.
I've actually found that most writers seem to fall into that hybrid category. And referring back to my favorite traditionally published author, which is the only one I ever name, that way I don't name some indie published one that, well, I don't want to make the others I like feel that I like them less. That's why I stick with only naming the one traditionally published author. Brad Thor uses much the same strategy. So
yeah, I think I've come across a couple of authors who dive straight in. Stephen King's one of them. He says that having a writer's notebook for ideas and outlines is the worst way to kill a brilliant idea. He comes up with his ideas and he goes to sleep on an evening and thinks about it. And then if he's still thinking about it in the morning when he wakes up, he knows it's golden. And then he decides to write that book, and he sits and he just goes for it. I'm sure when it comes to the rewrite or kind of the review process that he takes a step back and then goes through the story bit by bit to make sure that all the loose ends tie up. But the actual initial draft is done just from the heart and soul. It's just done for enjoyment rather than with anything in mind, any kind of destination in mind. And I used to write like that when I was younger. And I think for my own benefit, because my editing process was longer back then, I think that's probably why. So to save myself some time and some pain, some blood, sweat and tears, I tend to have some kind of outline and then still enjoy it just as much and give myself the freedom. But it doesn't take as much work then to fix all the problems that it causes. So I think that might be why authors do it the way they do, just to save themselves the effort at the end, really.
Well, it sounds like you're in the mainstream of most of the authors that appear here on the coffee shop. And I think your advice sounds fantastic. So do you actually sit down and, just like I'm doing with you, interview your characters and ask them silly little questions like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? Or do you just get to know your characters by writing?
A little bit of both. I like to know all the details about the character's description, where they live, who their relatives are, kind of their family tree and their friends. If they're supernatural, I need to know everything about their powers, their abilities. I also want to know about their limitations, so what are their weaknesses. But as far as favourite things, colours, food, places, that kind of thing, I just let that happen naturally. And if it's relevant to the story, it goes in. And if not, well, I kind of feel I don't need to know it, and neither does the reader. And some things are better left as a mystery anyway.
I've often heard about the book as being, this iceberg theory with writing, where the author needs to know the entire iceberg, every little crack and crevice. The reader only gets the top 10%, because the rest of it, they don't need to know.
I think that's a good summary, definitely. I would say I think I fall into that category. I know an awful lot more about my characters and my world than the readers do. And sometimes it's hard not to let those extra little bits seep through, because I'm so excited about the book and I'm excited about the characters that I want my readers to share this passion with me. But sometimes it's just an information overload and they don't need to know all the little things and probably wouldn't care anyway. So I think as the author, we just need to judge what the reader sees. And most of the time, the reader's skilled enough to fill in the gaps anyway. So they'll probably have their own assumptions. And despite the description of the characters, some readers make it up themselves. They have an image already in their mind. So, for example, one of my friends read my book a while back, and one of my characters is blonde. She has short blonde hair. She's quite thin, quite cheerful and bouncy. But despite me actually explaining this in the book, my friend had imagined her all along as a redhead. So I could mention the fact that she's got golden hair thousands of times, and to her it wouldn't matter. So I think you've just got to trust that your reader knows what's best in their imagination, and they can fill in the gaps if they want to.
All right, you mentioned another book coming out towards the end of this year. What genre is that going to be?
Well, I have kind of struggled with this, to be honest. I've heard it called death fiction, which I think sounds kind of depressing, personally. But I think just speculative fiction at the moment is the best description I have for it. It is kind of a depressing topic, but I think there's a light-hearted overlook. There's a happy ending. And I think I just wanted to give my morals and values and maybe a couple of life lessons in there as well. It's only planned to be a novella. It won't be a big novel. It won't be anything too difficult to slug through. It'll be a light-hearted read, but the book's called Noah Finn and the Art of Suicide, and it's out in December this year.
Well, I'll expect to see you back in the coffee shop the end of this year then.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to come and have another coffee with you, Jessie.
Well, as I give everyone the opportunity at the end of the show, please tell all the listeners where they can find more information about you and your books.
Sure, I'd love to. My website is erachelhardcastle.com, and Rachel is spelled Rachel, because I like to be awkward. There's information on there about my author services, my books, my merchandise, and there's a blog on there as well, so you can read all about what I've been up to and see some pictures. I can be found on Facebook. It would be facebook.com/eRachelHardcastle, the exact same spelling. And my Twitter is @ERHardcastle. A little bit shorter because my name's a bit too long for Twitter.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And for those of you trying to track me down, you can find me on Twitter @Jessie's POV, JESSIES POV, which does stand for point of view. And you can always shoot me an email at the station, Jessie@KLRNRadio.com. And on that note, I'm snatching these 4 books off the table, pouring myself another cup of coffee, and it is time to settle down with not 1, but 4 good books. And I will see you folks next time in the coffee shop.
What a matchup!
And what a team, Mike. Metro PCS and the iPhone SE for $0 on a network that covers 99% of people in the U.S. Oh, impressive.
Play with the best. Switch to Metro PCS on an unlimited LTE plan and get a 32-gig iPhone SE for $0. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax. Claim based on talk and text. Not valid for active numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro PCS in the past 90 days. See store for details and terms and conditions.